Hi, my name is Mark Stallard and welcome to Little Green Man. Someone had put a post on my page within the last 24 hours or so, maybe a little longer, about a minimum wage march that happened here in Winnipeg at the legislature. This would have been Tuesday that the march took place, and I know a couple of people, as it turns out, who went, and very passionate about the subject. And guess what? I'm quite passionate about it too. Now, I'm not going to weigh in too deep on the mainstream ideas of it. So we have on the one side the pros and the cons. Now, I might touch a little bit on the cons today, but I think the pros, I think that they've changed the conversation. The conversation, if it hasn't changed already, it's certainly in the process of it, and the need for bringing the minimum wage up to a livable wage level is clear. I think there's no doubt that people need money to live, and the people that are making money off them should be paying people a minimum wage. And of course, the bigger and the more successful companies, really the bigger, the more money they should be paying their workers. And they shouldn't have to rely on minimum wage at all. They should be giving them a living wage, or higher, preferably higher, without having to be prompted by government, which is really just proof that the market, as conservatives say, the market can sustain it. The market's the important thing. The market will dictate. Well, no, the market's a horrible place for this, because the market will make the wage as low as possible, so that people that are making money can make even more. And you've heard me say before, it'll keep coming down to ending all these big monstrosities of corporations and those stupidly, insanely rich people that own them. And so giving people a living wage, all really anyone's really asking for is make the workers' lives worth living, or not horrible at the very least. So I'm not going to talk too much about what happened at the march or what the people were saying at the march, but it does prompt me for this discussion on minimum wage, and I'm going to try and take a little bit of a different tack. I don't want to rehash what everybody are already talking about on both sides. Now, the problem with minimum wage, and what minimum wage should be doing, if we get the minimum wage up to a decent level, then that should empower employees to have a better life. But it's only one part that needs to be improved in an entire system that's completely, I think, gone upside down and inside out to make working people not just powerless, but feel powerless and to feel hopeless, and actually to be hopeless and to be powerless. There's a threat, of course, when the minimum wage, the right-wing analysts are saying, there's going to be mass unemployment, which is not true. There won't be mass unemployment, because people are corporations and businesses that can make money when the minimum wage raises are going to continue to make money. They're not going to go out of business and stop their own income. That's just silly. Now, they might move out of province, they might move out of the country. Those things have already happened in one form or another at various companies, at various corporations. But that's a real concern. How do we stop people from doing that? Just to be spiteful so they can make a little bit more money, so that poorer people can't make that money. And there's a real powerlessness here in Manitoba. I've alluded to it, I'm sure, in other videos. But it's, as an employee, you have the same rights on leaving an employer as the employer has of getting rid of you, and that you need no reason to leave an employer, and they don't need to provide a reason for getting rid of you. And I'm going to demonstrate that. This is from the Manitoba Labour Standards website. Okay? The link in the description as usual. This is from their fact sheet. I tried reading through the law. There's a lot of it, and it's really quite bogging me down a bit, so I decided to go with the fact sheet. But this is on the official page, so this is the piece that really caught my attention as really quite despicable as far as making people powerless and for potentially being a horrible law. Under the Employment Standards Code, employees and employers can terminate employment without any reason, but are required to give proper notice of the termination. So 2 weeks notice, bye, you're out of work. Now, that's fine if you're an employee. You cannot give a reason to your employer. Well, you can. You say, I want more money. It's kind of a silly way to make this equivalence. I mean, an employee, if they're let go with 2 weeks, particularly if they've been there for a year or so, or even if they've been there for 5 or 6 years, 10 years. If you've been there for 9 years, you get 6 weeks notice. And if you're somewhere, if you have 6 weeks notice, that's not going to last you very long as an employee to find a job that can make the same that you are making now. And it's really a difficult place for someone to be, particularly as they get older. But now with an employer, you can fill that spot pretty quick. Right now in Manitoba, we're looking at an average of about 7% unemployment right across the country. There are areas of the country that are close to 10%. I mean, this is depression in the UK in the 1980s after Margaret Thatcher was in power for a year or two. That the unemployment rate is almost 1 in 10 in some places. And it's 7%, more or less on average, right across Canada. Some places better than others. So you can find an employee just like that. I won't do too loud, so I'm not sure how it will come out. Anyway, but an employee cannot find a job that quick because the market is set up so that there are more employees looking for work than there are jobs. So it is an employer's market. So this seems fair, but it in fact is incredibly despicable and completely not even protecting any employee at all. But it gives all the power to the corporations and businesses. And now I'm harping a lot on corporations and the rich people that own them because they're the ones that deserve all our animosity as far as minimum wage and taking advantage of employees. So we should be calling them out, as I mentioned earlier. We should be calling them out for not providing people with a minimum wage if the company is making a profit, and if they're making a few $1,000s profit, as opposed, or in some places $100,000s, or in Walmart, I think it was $22 to $25 billion a year they make worldwide in profit. So if one family are getting $22 billion in profits, there's a little bit of tax that comes off that tiny bit. But we're talking billions and billions of dollars in the 20s of profit, but yet they argue that, well, we can't raise minimum wage, we can't raise our wages because we'll be out of business. And funnily enough, I actually seen several articles that seemed quite reasonable that demonstrated that because of the $22 billion is all the profit they make, when they have revenues of about $400 billion a year of money coming in, they only make about $22 billion in profit. When they split that up against everybody, they're going to be out of business. And I think that speaks more, not about, oh no, we better take care of Walmart because Walmart might go out of business. Rather, that should be something that we should be pointing at Walmart and companies like them, that they've got to change their swearing, cursing business model because it hurts people. And their business model is based on getting people, probably in China somewhere, who are getting paid pennies to make these products, and also using their big, massive buying power to force providers to sell them products at a lower rate, and then paying their employees as little as they can, giving them 24 hours work a week instead of employing them full time, paying them minimum wage here in Canada is about $11. In the US, it's can be as low as $7 in some places, and they're not even giving them enough hours so they can get benefits. I mean, this is a despicable business model. We should not be tolerating it. And I'm leading towards this as well, is where that the Walmart business model is, and people that use this business model, corporations that use that sort of a model now, destroy the small business, the local businesses that really do most of the employing. Things like I can't think what the stats are now, but there are more small businesses that are based locally in Canada, wherever you are in Canada, that employ people more than big business does, more than these corporations do. So if we're allowing Walmart to get away with this junk, paying people nothing so that they can sell you something for next to nothing, because that's all the people that live in the neighbourhood can afford now, because there's no jobs, because Walmart sucked them all up, and other people have left, and well, that's got to change. That's the thing that's wrong. It is the entire system that allows that kind of imbalance to happen. Now, I've got another thing. Is $15. We heard $15 for sure. I remember hearing it for the first time in the US build up to the US election with Bernie Sanders pushing for $15 an hour. Now, I assume they've done their homework and they know that $15 an hour will fix the problem where he was making those statements. And I wondered at the time, it did pass through my head, was, I wonder what minimum wage should be here. So I didn't even know what it was at the time, and I don't know and then what it should be, or even how to work it out. But I did question, well, obviously in the US dollar is higher than the exchange rate than the Canadian dollar, so I would anticipate the Canadian minimum wage to be less. Now, as I found out, since then I found out that the provinces manage their own minimum wage. They decide what is minimum wage and what isn't. Some places are higher than others, but it all seems to be close to around $11 an hour. Some people, some areas have already implemented, or trying to implement at least, a $15 an hour minimum wage. And I want to question that just a little bit. In Vancouver, it costs about $1 million. An average house costs about $1 million. I've got a source in the description, livingincanada.com, or livingin-canada.com. And I got these stats right, and really it doesn't really matter if these are factual or not. The point is that it makes, is that an average house is more in some areas than it is in others. Cost of living is going to be more in some areas than it is in Winnipeg. We know for sure that cost of living is lower in Winnipeg. And we can look at that in the house prices. That's why I brought it up. So $1 million for an average house in Vancouver, an average house in Winnipeg, $279,000. So just over $250,000. So it's houses in Vancouver, an average price is 3 times as much. So will a $15 minimum wage right across the country work for someone in Vancouver the same as it would work for someone in Winnipeg? Or will it work for someone in Vancouver, but Winnipeg could work for less than 15? And that's a question I think that we should ask. What is the correct way to calculate the minimum wage, and what would be best for Winnipeg and Manitoba, as opposed to other provinces? Now, there's obviously got to be some way that we can balance off the almost slave wages that we get from places like Walmart and other big corporations that funnel their money outside of the province to people that have that take the dividends off their stocks and spend it somewhere that's not even in Canada, let alone Manitoba, and where we can support small businesses that are funded here. So we can keep the money in Manitoba, and we can make Manitoban businesses successful, which would keep us employed as Manitobans, and it would benefit all of us. So I'm asking the question, don't have the answer, but there has to be a way that we can encourage small businesses in something under 100 employees. Maybe there's something we can do that can still raise the people's minimum wage up to a certain level, but maybe the government can step in and help out a little bit. Maybe those places that are 10 or 15 employees, they can get a little bit more help. And then you've got those little tiny places that maybe employ maybe 5 or 6 people. Maybe we could do something for them as well. I'm throwing it out there. I've got some ideas, nothing solid, but that's the point of this video. We have to do something about it. The system is skewed in favor of rich people. It is skewed against employees and employees and real people, real working people. But it's also sort of skewed against the very small places. And up until recently, I was 100% the $15 or bust until fairly recently. And I started to rethink, is that the right way? Again, I don't have any answers, just asking the question. And this was what I'm going to read as a post on Facebook on the Neighbourhood Bookstore and Café here in Winnipeg. It's actually in Wolesley, not too far from where I live, more than a walk, but won't take long to drive there. But this was posted by Bill Fugler on, hopefully I said that right, I'm not very good with names, who's the owner of the Neighbourhood Bookstore and Café. And I'm going to let him have the last word. Excuse me. And I'm just going to read the quote that he had on Facebook. I've edited it out just for a little, it's really quite a long quote. I edited it out For brevity, I'll explain what I've cut out, and I'm actually going to let this be the end. I'll read this to you, and I think it's kind of a compelling argument from me. It made me rethink my position. Let's see if we can think, maybe I'll help you to rethink your position and figure out some solutions. So the Neighbourhood Bookstore and Café Facebook page. I just want to chime in on the whole minimum wage thing as an employer and business owner. This is the largest platform I have, meaning Facebook. I'm all for a minimum wage increase, but don't think many people have seen the impacts that I have, and that these should be at least noted. Unless something is done to protect small businesses that don't make a lot of money, the first casualty of a $15 minimum wage will be stores like the Neighbourhood. Not because they don't want to pay it, but because they can't. He then goes into his experience from 2006 when minimum wages started to increase and how it negatively affected his business and his staff. We can argue the facts of that, but it's a compelling argument. And he continues. Our friends running higher-end businesses said that they didn't see this at all. They didn't see any change. But it was almost unanimous among businesses on our scale. We were flooded with people looking for work. I make the same money my staff does when there's a shortfall. I don't get paid. I know many businesses that do the same. My friends who work for banks say many small businesses that they manage have huge lines of credit or debt. For smaller businesses, it generally isn't that the owner is sitting on huge reserves of wealth and not sharing it. They're just getting by, or in many cases, are in a lot of debt. So while I am for minimum wage increase, I would like anyone who has input on the process to understand that unless genuinely small businesses are protected, the how of this is another discussion. A lot of diversity that makes a city interesting will disappear. Everyone can work for Starbucks, Walmart or McDonald's, and that's fine, but I would like to see the smaller places survive and with a positive work environment for staff. There was a response, and it was a response I might have given when I first saw this, which was $15 or bust kind of an answer. But he then replies, Canada has no problem bailing out banks, Bombardier or airlines to the tune of millions because of poor decisions made by those businesses. But if we needed to help to make up the difference while we saw if things would adjust, for a problem created outside of the business, to keep 6 to 8 people employed for 6 months at a new wage, it makes us unprogressive. I make minimum wage as well, so this would be an increase for me too. Bill Fugler, owner of the Neighbourhood Bookstore and Café. Let's have that discussion. Little green man.